Hello, beautiful boss babes. Are you ready to chase life with Kelly? Well, I'm your host, Kelly Chase, and I'm so excited you're here. We are going to talk about all things love, dating, relationships, money mindset. We're going to dive deep into self-love, worthiness. I am going to bring on some incredibly empowering guests. We're going to have fun, we're going to laugh, and perhaps we're even going to shed some tears together. I am here to empower you, inspire you, and motivate you to create the life you crave. I am so excited for today's episode. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome back to the show. I have such an amazing guest on for this episode. We have been friends for quite some time now, and we actually met working together a handful of years ago, and we'll dive into that story a little bit. But she is a best-selling author and a self-care specialist. Please welcome Miss Jamie McFaden to the show.
Ooh, thank you. Hi, Kel. How you doing, love?
I'm so good. How are you?
I am lovely. It is a beautiful, what day is today? Tuesday?
Tuesday, I know.
whatever day it is. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. I'm really excited to just have this podcast going again. And I don't know, just things are falling into place. I feel it. It just feels
alignment. Word of the day.
Yeah. Yes, it is. It's been so good. And just staying grounded, like when I do feel overwhelmed or, some stress bottling up, I'm like, Kelly, remember, regulate your nervous system, ground ourselves. Everything is fine.
Absolutely, girl. Well, I have to just give you a massive shout out. Obviously, your audience doesn't know our deep relationship all these years, but just shouting you out for knowing all that you have been done, seen, like you put your heart and soul into everything. And for anyone that only knows you from Love is Blind, like that is brilliant and beautiful. And I'm so happy that that experience opened up so many beautiful moments and things for you. I also just know Kelly at the core. And I remember that one time sitting at a bar somewhere on a work trip. And after one of our company things, and just loving who you are. And you are just the epitome of ball of joy and love wrapped up into one and beautiful inside and out. So yeah, thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm blushing over here. Oh my God, I think I had like 5 vodka drinks that night. So all of me was totally exposed.
It was great.
So fun. Oh my gosh. So yeah, so Jamie and I met through Active. If you are not familiar with that, it is an all audio-based fitness app. Well, it was back then when I worked with them. I don't know if it's transformed over time, but they may have videos now. But it was like such a cool modality, I guess, to just like work out and not have to worry about, like looking down at like paper or your phone or something for like the next move. And we just like train people literally through audio on every single step through their workout. And it was like super cool. But I was always so excited to meet Jamie because she was like this celebrity trainer. And I was like, this is so cool. Wait, who did you tell the audience who you like worked with before?
I mean,
you've worked a lot, but
a lot of different people. But in terms of, I would say the person that I worked alongside the most with was Jillian Michaels on so many different projects. And that was ultimately what led me to doing so many things. So I've got to always give her a shout out, because if it weren't for her, like that was an incredible experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just love that. But you just have this like aura about you. And the first time we met was for a photo shoot. And you had literally just had your child. And
I was breastfeeding at the photo shoot.
Yeah, you were breastfeeding Sophia at the photo shoot. It was so great.
Yeah. Single mom working life. Yes.
Yeah. So let's dive in. I want to know. I'm like, I want to know about you. I want my listeners to know all about you and, just everything that you've gone through. If you can touch on just different challenges and obstacles that you have managed to triumph and really overcome, and elaborate a bit on this single motherhood. And your daughter is now 5 or 6?
5.5.
5.5. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Wild. It goes as fast, if not faster, than everybody says. All the cliche things, all that. I'm like, okay, all the positives are very true. What I will say is this, I didn't anticipate being a single mom. I grew up in an old school traditional Greek family. I envisioned the fantasy fairy tale of marrying, my Greek god man and having about like pumping out probably 10 kids and being a stay-at-home mom working on a farm at the beach. Like that was kind of the vibe I was going for. Right. Totally realistic, very realistic. And then life evolved. I decided not to join into the family business. I was the first woman in my family of all generations to go to college, put myself through college, moved to Greece, then moved to LA. And lo and behold, realized and recognized that so much of the story that I had told myself of who I was and what I was destined to be, in fact, really wasn't that. And coming to terms with that at a young 20s was fairly interesting. And then it made me realize, you know what, I'm just going to really enjoy my journey, however that is. And my dad passed away when I was 18, and that was definitely a really monumental moment of my life that shifted a lot of things for me. He was my best friend. He was, the closest person to anyone in my life, to like that I've had that relationship. And certainly there was some baggage that came along with losing him so suddenly. And then all of a sudden, as I got into my 20s, really had that feeling of, man, I want my own family. I wanted that so bad. I knew from the time I was born, I wanted so bad. My nickname in high school was Mama Bear. I've always been Mama Bear. Always, always, always. And then fell madly in love in my 20s, a few different times, but specifically, the one time was fairly fast, furious, and exactly as you would probably expect it to be. Met someone, fell head over heels, knew right away there was probably a bunch of red flags, turned them all immediately green because of the passion and the chemistry and all of the like, oh, wow, whimsical being in that zone. And ended up getting pregnant. And then things did not pan out the way I anticipated. And I just remember in this one specific moment thinking to myself, okay, you can either be a victim or a victor of this circumstance. And there is no way that I was going to be a victim. And I thought to myself, I am going to approach this from the greatest place of love that I possibly can, not just for the sake of my child, but for the sake of the whole. And so, from that day forward, I've never, I won't say anything negative about the situation. Actually, it was the greatest gift I've ever been given. And so I've got nothing but love. But yes, it had been very complicated. And becoming a single mom, as I'm starting a business, becoming somewhat of an entrepreneur, working down in LA with celebrities and Jillian Michaels and all these people, and then realizing and recognizing, okay, I'm going to do this alone. What the heck? And then I got a job offer with Aptiv, and I remember being very specific because I had to. I said, well, I'm going to have to bring my daughter every time I go to New York. Now, I was in California. The office is in New York. And they're like, well, we need you out here, 8 times a year. And we got to go fly you here and fly you there. And I'm like, well, the nanny needs to come, AKA my mother and my child. So somehow I turned this really lemony situation that could have been the worst possible thing of my life, right? Being a single mom, not knowing what the heck I was doing, really, like as adults, that's the best part too. I love as adults, none of us really know what's going on. I write letters to Sophia just so someday when she realizes that I'm not the superhero that she thinks I am, that she's like, oh, mom's real. But the reality is we all are going to go through struggles. Life's going to hit us with a bazillion different waves. And I will be a firm believer that every one of us has a choice. We make 30,000 of them a day. Plus we all have a choice to decide how are we going to react to any situation? And I remember in my situation, there was a lot of not so great things going on, but how can we turn this into something that is beautiful? How can we take the pain and grow through the pain? And that's essentially what I've done.
Yeah, I love that. You have. I love it. You create so many so much video content, and it's so great. So everyone listening, like her daughter, like you guys are main characters. Like you both are the main character. I freaking love it. And I mean, Jamie also wrote a book, a children's book. And Sophia is like the main character, and it's like so cute. Sophia's village, isn't it?
Yeah. So we wrote during the pandemic. I remember so many of my girlfriends were making the delicious sourdough breads and like delivering them to my house. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I was like, no, I'm not going to make bread. I don't really eat bread. And then I'm like, but let's be creative and make something. So then Sophia and I wrote the story, Sophia's Village, just kind of all about the messaging behind it is our story, right? Like you could feel lost, you could feel alone. And not just as me as a single mom or her as being raised by a single mom, but in anyone's situation, I think we can, especially during the pandemic, recognize that a lot of us have felt lonely at some points in our life. And that feeling of being alone can be one of the most detrimental feelings to anyone. And so this story is all about this little girl that gets lost, and then she finds some things that potentially she would have thought were scary, like a T-Rex or all these things. But in fact, everyone's lost. And so they all come together and they create this village and they find their way home. And so that book ended up, we got bestseller thanks to our mutual friend, Samantha Joy, who then I worked with her for this book, The Waves of Self-Care, that just recently came out. And we hit bestseller in 3 different categories, #1 in 3 different categories in 24 hours. And this book also has the word village in it. It takes a village because the point behind everything that I do and teach and live and breathe and try my best to lead by example is that it is not a solo mission. Right. We are not here to be alone. We are here to be together. We are all connected. We're just like a drop of water that is then the ocean. We are all together. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing whatever I can to, producing content. You made me laugh because Sophia the other day was talking to somebody, and for the first time ever, she made fun of me. Like, it was actually hilarious and brilliant. She did she was being me, and she goes, well, my mommy for work, I'm going to do mommy for work. And then she looks at them and goes, okay, we're going to make a self-care video, and then we're going to cook some healthy food, and we're going to make sure we drink a lot of water, and don't forget to get your sleep, and and I'm like, this is what she tells me. This is what I do. Right. But also I was like, well, this is kind of cool that my kid is seeing this stuff, and I make mistakes every day. So in no way whatsoever am I perfect or anywhere near that. But the point I'm recognizing is that our children, and in fact, the people that we are around, are inevitably, we are going to rub off of each other and riff off of each other. And so it is so important in any kind of relationship, whether it's mother-daughter, whether it's friend, platonic, intimate, whatever kind of relationship anyone is in. I think the greatest thing that I've learned over the last few years in being a mom and being a full-time single mom that works is there's always someone watching. And also, if you really truly love, it's all about acceptance. Like, that's the biggest thing I would say that I've learned in my own personal love journey is the definition to me of love is truly accepting ourselves and accepting and embracing that, whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, I've failed many relationships. I'm single. I'm single, and I love it.
Okay.
Okay.
I love that.
Great. Yeah.
I love that. I think when you can recognize like being single is like a superpower for you, and just really accepting that. I think it's interesting because my mom sometimes will say to me, you're all about self-love and like, it's okay being single and stuff like that. She's like, but like, ultimately, I think everybody really wants to like be with someone. And I was like, yeah, Mom, I'm not like promoting people to be alone and single forever and just
stay away. No.
Yeah, I'm like, there's just a part of us that I feel everyone needs that time with themselves to really learn themselves.
Boom.
Right?
Boom. I had been, and I think you and I might be similar in this, but I had been from the time that I dated, and this is all in my book too, which is funny. My grandma's like, oh, it's pretty raw, but I love it. And I'm like, yeah. You know me, I'm going to tell the truth. It is what it is. But, from the time that I ever got into any relationships in my life, intimate relationships, I was always that monogamous, just had like, that was it. It was like got into like a deep relationship with somebody. I love connection. I love deep connection. I love anything that's really kind of mind, body, soul connection. Right. So if I had that with somebody, that was it. And until it didn't work. And then at some point later, there was someone else, but typically been in relationship. And I didn't have very much time in my teens and 20s where I was actually single for a long period of time. I was in a few kind of long relationships. And then when I became a single mom, I made the conscious decision to actively not just be single because of the pain that I was experiencing in my heart and the heartbreak and all of that. That was certainly an element that inspired that. But it woke me up to the realization that I want to make sure I know that I am whole and that I feel whole and complete on my own, and that I really truly love all of me, the dark stuff. Like I want to face all of that because, and of course, this is where I'm so grateful to my soul connection to my daughter, is certainly when you have a child and you recognize that your child is inevitably going to learn everything for the first however many years of their life from you. That is a massive responsibility. And I accepted that responsibility, and not only accepted it, made me really truly want to face every part of my mirror, strip down the makeup, in every way, the depth of that, get to the core, face the traumas, understand where this came from or why I made these choices. And how can I continue to accept and embrace and grow so that I can then truly teach my daughter something that I, maybe at a young age, I'm certain that after my dad passed away and some other things that had happened from childhood, that there were points in my journey where my self-esteem had dipped and I wasn't putting myself first, and I wasn't putting myself at the top of my priority list. And I was a total people pleaser that just wanted to make everyone feel happy and butterflies and rainbows, despite whatever it would do to me, or despite some of the other things that were going on that maybe weren't great with them. And so now where I'm at, it was incredible from a single mom, for the first 4 years of my daughter's life, I did not enter any sort of relationship. I truly, and it was interesting because so many people tried to set me up. Oh my gosh, it was like, I have this best guy and he wants more kids and he's got this, whatever. All of the people wanted to set me up. And I was so gracious and, went on a couple dates, met a couple nice people, but it wasn't anything that I wanted to bring home. It didn't feel home. And that was 4 years. 4 years is a long stretch to be completely single. Yeah. And also as a full-time mom, it's not like I didn't go out. It was very just, this is my job right now. And this is the season for this. And I'm totally dedicated. And this is, and I felt compelled to believe that that was the greatest thing I could do for myself and my family. Right. So fast forward 4 years later, ended up meeting someone and totally was able to go into this experience with this person, knowing that this may or may not work, and also not putting the pressure on either side, and also acknowledging that if this person, meets my kid, and all, like, there was just so many different elements to it that came up. However, what I will say is, although that was not a forever relationship, I met an incredible human being with a kind soul who was delightful and was able to open my heart that had the wall of China built around it, open my heart back up. And best part is, here we are today. And I am, yes, single in this moment. My heart is so open now. And it was almost like that was able to bridge this gap that I had. And, being from here where I was like, nope, nobody's getting in, nobody's, there's no access points anywhere, to actually having a really healthy relationship. And although it wasn't a forever relationship, it served a beautiful purpose. And I think in life, when we can understand that there really is a purpose behind all the relationships that we do have, good, bad, and different, we can really start to actually love each other better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I found that, like I said, through my own discovery, and the first year that I dove into personal development. I didn't date anyone. And everyone all no one knows. I mean, some people know this, but like from the show, like I really started my journey like the end of 2017. And so it was a year later that we filmed Love is Blind. And I didn't have sex with Kenny because I had made a vow to myself that I would not sleep with someone until I knew them for at least 3 months. That was the biggest reason why that did not occur while we were filming. I think we were the only couple that didn't have sex. I'm pretty sure. So, but, I mean, he was loving about that too. Like he didn't want to either, or whatever. That's what he said. It was just like, since that, like, and then I dated someone after that, like months after, I dated someone that I had known for a long time. And even with him, like knowing this man for so long, I still kept to my like 3-month rule. Cause I was like, yeah, we know each other, but like, we don't know each other and like how each other are going to show up in a relationship and all of that either. And, and because relationships are different, like an intimate relationship to a friend relationship, it can be quite different. So it was just
certainly
that I really wanted to, I heard my mom, my entire, adolescent life say, give him like 6, she would always say 6 months, 6 months. If they're still around in 6 months, marry them. That's what she would say.
There we go. All right, Sophia, we can educate her now. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. She's grabbing something and I'm like, oh, good thing that you're in my headphone now.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about all that.
Yeah.
So,
oh my God.
No, I love that you said that because I too, when going back into that swimming pool, after that long hiatus, and I will wholeheartedly say I'm a very kinesthetic driven person, meaning physical touch and all of those things are very important to me in many ways, and it's something that I think is beautiful. I have an entire subchapter in my book about sex and intimacy because it's something that from the time I was very young I found very fascinating and beautiful from a standpoint of, wow, we have this body and then we have this ability to actually connect spiritually with another person, right, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and then these sensations that we can have. And so I've always been, I'm very in touch with my sensuality, sexuality. And it is, so having that time, where it was not, and then getting, back into that pool of dating,
right.
For me, it was a little bit scary at first because I had potentially some trust issues at the time and was like, oh, everybody's on the internet and we can just like swipe. And this is wild that you could just say no to like, oh, and then you can have multiple and then, oh my gosh. Yeah. And I remember thinking that. And then I also recognized that, we get to create our own structural boundaries in our life and our heart of what works for us. And so it was very great to have that time and be clear on what is important to me. So touching on what you just said of having that kind of 3-month rule for me, it was, and I actually recently had a dream about this and it's so fascinating. I had a dream that coincides with what we're saying, where oftentimes, and I know I had done this in the past, you get into a relationship, your feelings are hot and heavy, you've got chemistry and connection and you're like, oh, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're in love with this person, but you're really in lust with this person. Yeah. And then fast forward, and I choose potentially with partners, I choose to be monogamous. And so for me, having that choice also adds the pressure of like this relationship stuff. So, and that had been something that it was really great to be able to face head on and recognizing that I think it is so beautiful and going forward in relationships to establish a spiritual connection first. Yeah. And to establish a friendship and to take these different steps within the relationship, as opposed to just hitting the fast forward, like jumping in the bed. And it's funny because I could hear literally like my grandma or the older generation kind of making fun of us. And then also the free love generation, our parents' generation, which was totally different. Right. But I also think where we're at right now in the world and what going into relationships, now going forward, truly, for me, it's the most important thing is establishing a really deep connection first without the sexual connection. And that's, for me, that's really important. And it's really interesting because I'm 36 years old and when you meet someone that you're attracted to, typically, that's something that is is kind of, there's an expectation kind of drawn of, okay, well, we like each other. Like, do you not like me? Or, whereas to me, I'm very grounded in my boundaries of like, well, no, it's not that I don't want to. It's just, it's really important to me to delay gratification sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Same. Yeah, I do. I'm such an advocate of just getting to know the self so much. So it's like, okay, if I'm like continuing to get to know myself, like I really want to just get to know that person on that level first too, before, because it really can blur the lines and all of that, So, I mean, I've had my
for sure
with benefits, adventures and things like that.
Well, tell me more. So I am like, I'm at a phase in my life where I'm like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've basically just been in like monogamous relationship, never had friends with benefits. Like there's a lot. I don't know how deep we're getting on this thing, but there's a lot of things that I'm like, oh my gosh, I really haven't had very many like experimental situations with sex and intimacy in that sense.
Right.
And yeah. And so anyways, I'm like the giddy little girl that's like, oh my gosh, tell me more. So wait, tell me more. Friends with benefits. Like share, can you tell me a little bit about like a fun story there?
Yeah, I mean, well, what's, learning through it, I mean, you would think, so I actually endured a friends with benefit situation years ago in college, and it did not go very well. Like traumatic experience came from it. So you would think that that would not be something I would ever explore again. But I never went to therapy. I never healed from that up until these last 4 years, right? So relationships, any type of, if I was finding myself, again, like what you were saying about people pleasing, it's like I would find myself like seeking that like external love and acceptance and validation. And particularly like I was never a dater. Like I've never been someone who's going on multiple dates. I just wasn't. Like I was a relationship person. So like I dated someone pre-college, someone right after college for like almost 2 years. And then someone a couple of years later, another almost 2-year relationship. In the in-between time though, I would say like in between those few relationships or those 2 relationships after college, I think it was more like makeouts and like getting drunk at the bars and like, just being silly and stuff. Right. But then after the second relationship after the college situation, which was literally my last long-term relationship, which it will be 10 years next year. That will be my that's a long gap too. Granted, I've dated whatever since, but I've lost myself really hard in that relationship. And, it was someone that had said, we had conversations about like marriage and things like that. The first and only Christmas I ever spent away from my family was with his family. And so I think, doing that was like a super big deal. He broke up with me like weeks after I went to visit. I was like, you mother trucker. So it was just definitely like heartbreaking and full of rejection. And again, I had lost myself so much in that relationship that I just like didn't know who I was. But I just for 4 or 5 years after following, I was like attracting, like when, now I like talk about it because I've done a lot of the healing work, but when girls are like, dating's the worst and guys suck and guys are the worst and all this stuff, I'm like, okay, well, now that I've done my healing, I don't agree with you. But back then, yeah, I could probably agree with you that guys sucked because I was attracting these guys that weren't showing up for me in the best way. And they were constantly just like wanting to sleep with me or whatever, and I would allow it because I was like, okay, sure. Like, let's go. Because you just want to be loved and accepted, but not in that way. But that's the way we think that we need it in that moment. Right. So, but it was just like this like constant cycle of that for 5 years until I, started diving into this personal development. And what I have learned, I will say I have experienced like a friends with benefits situation where I have had conversations with like a relationship coach. So I will go to her and be like, okay, what do you think about this kind of thing? But she did a lot of like healing work for me that has helped me to attract the right type of person in. So with that being said, I feel like if I am diving into a friends with benefits situation, I am hyper aware now of like, okay, I know this isn't long term, but maybe, I know it's not long term,
Right.
but it's providing a need and a comfort for me right now, as well as I feel like I am giving that to that other person. We're on the same page. We talk about things like, so we know. And the conversation of, well, when feelings or thoughts start to shift, we have to end this, or we obviously have to communicate and figure it out in a different way. But what the relationship coach had said to me, she was like, if you can have a platonic relationship with someone while keeping your heart open to the more aligned person, it's totally fine to have a friends with benefit. If you need sex every once in a while, like, it's totally fine. She's like, if you just need someone to snuggle with you, like, okay, but if it starts to shut your heart off,
right,
because you're actually desiring that person, but then they can't show up for you again, like, she's like,
right,
you've done the work, so you just have to be aware of like when you have to choose yourself, like, it's about continuing to choose yourself. But if feelings start to shift and you're like going back into your old ways of like people pleasing and okay, then it's time to like, you have to let that go.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. And that sounds so healthy.
Yeah.
And that sounds, everything that I teach in the self-care stuff and, in my book and all the courses I teach and my clients, everything we go through is called the wave system. And it's all, everything I do is about the wave, because I believe truly we are all connected. Life is a wave. There's going to be times where we're up. There's times when we get crashed and clobbered. It's all beautiful, no matter what it is. It's ever flowing. The energy is everywhere. And it's a challenge, right? If you go try surfing for the first time, you're not just going to jump on the board, no matter where you're at. You're not just going to jump on with no clue and just be pumping out waves. It takes skill. It takes practice. So anyways, when it comes to everything that I teach, including in relationships, is all about understanding the wave system. So it's well-being. Like, what does that mean, right? So if we were to take this into relationships, what does it mean to be well? And I think it's a subjective answer. I don't think there is a one size fits all. So for example, with me, I have a clear identification that I have cultivated in my own space of, okay, I know what I want in a relationship, and I'm very clear, right? Like for me to be in a well-rounded relationship, it means having a partner who is aligned with my purpose and who is also driven and ambitious like me, who can also support the reality that I am an ambitious and driven woman who has a child, who wants 100% to have a child and or more children. Like for me, it is so clear. I'm like, I know, right? So there's like defining the well-being, then bringing awareness to it. That's the A in my wave system. So understanding like, where are you at, right? So I think oftentimes, and I see this more often with women that I talk to, is they're not even aware of what they're doing. Right. And I know for a lot of, my teens and 20s, I was completely unaware of what I was doing. I was just pleasing everyone and, doing the best that I could, but really unaware of understanding what I actually truly believed in, wanted, desired, needed. Totally. And so being aware, right? Like understanding where you're at. And right now it's great because it personally in my life, and I think it's really important to vocalize this. I think for anyone that's listening right now, so much of what Kelly and I do about self-awareness and self-love and self-care is about truly asking ourselves some of these difficult questions. Who am I? What am I desiring? What am I putting out there? What am I doing currently to actually lead myself towards the water I want to get to? And doing it from a place of grace and love, I think, is also very difficult, because oftentimes we're so hard on ourselves. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm not married yet, and I have a kid, and I'm a single mom, and I'm 36, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and da 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 da. Now can I have more children? Am I too old? Are my eggs okay? Like, does anyone want this? Like, we could all go through that cycle, and it's gonna happen. But the reality is bringing the awareness to kind of say, okay, I'm aware that those thoughts are going through my head. Like, I can watch that movie play out, or I can simply bring the awareness to it, meet myself with love like I would to my friends, and say, hey, look what you're doing right now. You're taking a lot of these steps to enhance your well-being, to be the best partner that you can, to show up for someone else. That's the best that you could do. So bringing the awareness to it, then cultivating the vision, right? If we can get clear on that vision, like I said, I know, and I also am 100% sure and have deep, deep, deep beliefs that I know. And actually, I'm going to say this out loud right now. I am 36 years old. I fully believe that in the next 3 to 6 months, I will have met my partner. Within the next 2 years, we will actually have another child. So by the time I'm 38 years old, I have had this vision with so much clarity recently. And it's so funny because I'm like, who is it? Like, do I know them? Like, who is this? And I, for anyone that knows me and my depth, I'm a massive tapped in to and through my dreams from the time I was a kid. I get these visions. I have very, very clear intuition tapped into a spiritual side that still to this day I don't fully understand. But if I ever have types of dreams like this, they all have come true.
Yeah.
All of them. And so it makes me laugh because I'm like, I don't know who this person is, but I do think it's important for these kind of things, putting it out there because you're then calling it in. It's the last step of the wave system. So we have well-being, awareness, vision, and then the last one is energy. Like, what action steps is anyone taking? And I think that that's the key, is like thanks to my buddy, Dr. Chris Lee, always telling me in my head, mood follows action. Yeah. Every step that we do is actually inevitably leading us to where we're going. So paying attention to what we're doing. If you want to be in a relationship and all you're hanging out with is single people, good luck.
Right.
Like if, you know, if you want to have a child and every one of your friends that you're around does not have a child, chances are you're not taking, you know, like, and I'm just saying that in more of a social setting, but I think that there's a lot to that if we could just start to bring awareness to what we really want, desire, need, however you want to phrase it, it makes it a lot easier to take those steps. So in terms of relationships, like if somebody's like, yeah, I just want to have sex right now. Like, I just want to be, you know, friends with benefits, or I really want this deep connection. Like for me, I know I want a spiritual partner. I want a life partner. That's like, I feel it. I'm like, oh yeah. But we live in a place right now where there is so much at everyone. Like, we're so inundated with like, check this person out, check that guy out, check this girl out. Like, look at all these fun things that you could have. You could have 18 partners. You could do this, you could do that. And I think a lot of us can get lost in that.
Yeah.
In that shuffle.
Mm-hmm.
So,
hey, gorgeous. Would you love to work with me on a more one-to-one basis, taking yourself, your relationships, business, and bank account to the next level? I want to invite you to book a one-to-one breakthrough plus strategy session with me. Apply for 6-month private one-to-one coaching or my Goddess Magic Mastermind, or simply dive into the Goddess Magic digital course bundle. Go to the link in the show notes if you'd like to work more intimately with me. I look forward to working with you.
Yeah. Anyways, that's my wave system. If anybody needs more, send me a DM. I love supporting people on their own journey wherever they are at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that so much. And it really, I mean, yeah, all of that is so good. I mean, having the awareness is like probably my favorite part, because we don't like, and that's what I was saying, like those like 5 years after that last long-term relationship that I had, I didn't have that awareness. That's why I was just going through the motions in my, you know, multiple jobs that I was working, to like doing very negative cyclical behavioral patterns week after week, weekend after weekend, like, and I was like, what in the world? And it really was, you know, a guy I actually had on my podcast last year. But it was this guy, he literally started following me on Instagram, you know, when I knew who my followers were back then. It was so funny because like he started following me, and so I like go and I like click on his thing, and I'm like, who's this hot piece of so good looking? I was like,
oh my, no, I'm just kidding. No, she can't.
So good looking. But you know, as you were saying at the beginning, is like every relationship that you encounter, whether it is like your life partner or a stranger at the grocery store, right? It's like every person that you encounter is there for a reason.
100%.
You know, and it's like, it may just be that smile at the cash register that you needed that day, or something, you know what I mean? Like something is there to teach you, or even if it's not positive, if it's a negative, you know, meet,
right?
A negative meet.
Totally.
Okay? That's a mirror reflection of what's
I was just going to say the mirror.
Yeah. It's totally a reflection of what's going on inside of you. Okay. So what can you learn from that? What can you gain from that experience? Right. But anyway, so this guy was like, he was showing things on his Instagram about like meditating and journaling and reading personal development books. And I was like, okay, you're so attractive. 1, 2, no guy that I know is doing this, that I'm hanging out with every weekend, you know, they're partying and doing crazy shit.
Right.
I am not. I mean, like, I wasn't involved in like a lot of the party stuff, but I was still awake and I was alert and guilty by association, more or less. But with that said, it's like that person, like, they were my messenger. I call him my messenger. He was my messenger. That was his purpose. Although I wanted to date him, he was just my messenger, and it was a beautiful exchange that we had for a handful of months. That was literally like part of the catalyst to like my whole personal development journey. Because I was like, I don't know, you know, when you're like interested in someone, you're like, oh, I want to be interested in what they're doing. So I started reading, like he would suggest these books and I was like, okay. So I like bought these handful of books and I'm like, okay. So it was really like the start of this whole personal development journey, which helped me to start becoming more aware of myself, of course. And then through everything, it's just been like, okay, what do you want? You literally can have what you want. And if it's not that, it's going to be the equivalent or something better. And so anytime, like now, when I get in my head about things, I mean, granted, yes, I know I said that I had this whole like ego bullcrap happen at the beginning of this past year or last year, I guess. But it was because I was so hyper aware, but I didn't understand what was going on.
Right.
I think that can be very challenging. It's like you can be aware, but also if you're not understanding and you can't figure it out, it's like just keep taking action and you will figure it out at some point and you will really have clarity around that awareness. But like now, as I step more into me and who I'm becoming, it's like, okay, if I am met with some type of like conflict or inner struggle, I'm like, Kelly, remember, and I just have the awareness, it's all working out. Everything is good. How can I make this more fun? How can I make it more, you know, flow and easy and things like that? And then I continue on that path. You know, I'm trying to like really step into like the path of least resistance in like everything that I'm doing. So, you know, going back to like having a friends with benefits type of situation or, you know, just casual relationships, it's again, having that awareness to be like, okay, feelings are shifting. I know what I need to do. And you having the self-trust to do it.
Yes.
That can be a very difficult thing.
Absolutely. Well, and you just brought up something that I think is really important to tap in a little bit more. You brought up the element of self-awareness, right? Like we can recognize sometimes like, okay, I know I'm doing this thing, but I just keep doing it, right? Or I know I'm doing it, but now what? And I think one of the biggest marks, and this is why in what I do with self-care, and this is the whole premise behind the book that I wrote, is we are conditioned to believe that we're supposed to do all this stuff alone and figure it out, right? Like throw ourselves into life, real life, and like figure it all out. Despite whatever we had happen as children, as adolescents, what we learned from our parents, what we learned from the traumas we went through, whatever else, figure it out, right? You're an adult now, figure it out. And the reality is, I'm going to say probably 100% of us do not have all the tools to figure out mental well-being, spiritual well-being, physical well-being, emotional, like who knows how to really deal with their emotions as an adult. Let's be real. 1 in 3, I think it is now, people are on some sort of medication, whether it's anxiety, depression, sleep. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a time and a place for all of that. But the thing I want to tap into right now for just a moment is we are not meant to do this alone. So for example, Kelly, with what she does, you know, okay, I'm going to just say this. I have a therapist. I have a doctor I talk with. I have a female doctor I talk with. I have a brain doctor that I talk with. I have so many, I have coaches. I take courses, you know, I have a whole entire, so my book is called Waves of Self-Care. It Takes a Village, because I'm debunking the reality that we think, or we tell ourselves, or we're conditioned to believe that we're just supposed to figure it out, throw the spaghetti at the wall, or what's wrong with you? How come you haven't figured this out and you're this age and you're not married and you're whatever. And then we run that cycle where to me, I'm like, no. We need that. Like, I'm all about like, we need like the Care Bears coming together, hugging each other, loving each other, supporting one another. Instead, we live in a world where oftentimes people can just be so polarized and shut each other out. And then internally, we believe like we need to do this on our own. That is a bunch of BS. So for anyone that's listening right now, I'm going to say this out loud because I said this in my book and I mean this. And I've gotten more DMs and phone calls than ever because oftentimes people do feel alone, whether they're even in relationships or not. They feel they're isolated. This happens all the time with new moms. This happens when people are single. This happens even in relationships. And I say this and I mean this, reach out, whether it's to me, whether it's to someone else, reach out to someone and let them know you'd love their support, whatever it is. And I think that when we start to recognize that we're not so isolated, we start to cultivate a village because we need to cultivate our own village. And it starts with you. It starts with me. Like we have to put that out there. And I think in terms of relationships, just going full circle on this, you know, Kelly and I, we've known each other a long time. We've seen each other through, you know, different types of relationships in that sense. And we've always been incredibly supportive of one another. There has never been a time. I vividly remember a time when Kelly had called me about something and I had just said, you know, we talked for like an hour or something. And it was just, I remember all I wanted to do was just be there to support her. And this was before you being on the show or being, you know, in all the light that you are now in, which I love. But I wanted to support you. And you've always done that for me. You've always championed me. You've always supported me. These are the people to continue having in your inner circle. So to anyone that's listening right now, take inventory of the relationships you have, whether it's platonic intimacy, whether it's your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, kids, like whatever, the people that you're around all the time, the people you're watching on social media, are they actually feeding your soul or are they draining your energy? And I think that awareness is key too. So anyways, off the soapbox.
100%. No, I think that is, well, it's interesting too, because there's a lot of oftentimes when we may just feel alone because we feel alone, but two, when we start to do a lot of this personal development work, we also start to feel very alone because maybe our social circle wasn't doing that with, you know, that's obviously why we started doing it, because we probably weren't hanging out with the people that were doing it. Totally. And that was my journey. You know, I actually, you know, I had my friends that were like in relationships, getting married, having kids. And then I had my single friends that were indulging in just drinking and going out and hanging and partying on the weekends. And that was fine. And it's great. And it was fun and it was wonderful. But when I started to like dive into things, you know, reading and staying in on a Friday night, not doing anything, you know, it became a very lonely handful of months for me. Because I was like, I don't want to necessarily go hang out with my friends in relationships because I would rather hang out with myself, right? Like I knew that me hanging out with anybody was like it had been a way to distract myself. And I was trying to like actually avoid connecting with myself. So now I was like, I'm going to connect with myself. So I would stay in. And I remember my parents like calling me, what are you doing tonight? And I'm like, just sitting on my couch reading a book or listening to a podcast or taking this course or whatever. And they're like, they literally would, are you okay? Like, are you depressed? Is something wrong with you? Like, I was Party Girl for the last 10 years, you know? So it was like so interesting. But with all that being said, like, you know, there was distance created between some friends. Obviously, the real friends are still here to the end with me. But I had to do things alone. I had to go to workshops alone, you know, local events alone. I had to submerge myself in online masterminds and Facebook communities and things like that alone in order to step into that next level version of me and really attract the right type of people in. Not to say that everyone else was the wrong type of people. Let me say that again, but like attract the type of people that were doing the things that were pulling me upwards versus downwards, right?
100%. Yeah. I think for anyone that starts their self-care journey, and I have a whole chapter on that in the book too, where it's all about, it can feel like a very lonely place because everyone around us, we all operate out of comfort. So we want to do what's comfortable. That's why a lot of us have issues with, you know, for me, people will come to me, I want to lose weight or I want to make this change. And it turns out, you know, when you start to peel back the layers and bring the awareness and shine the light on it, you're like, oh, it's so much deeper than that. And then they start to do some of the things. They're like, okay, I'm motivated. I'm going to do this. And then their spouse, their family, their friends, they're like, who are you? We don't like this version of you. And then people feel almost attacked of like, oh, you you don't like me anymore kind of thing. And so I also think no matter what, at the end of the day, you know, recognizing like there are people in this world for you at any phase of your life and vice versa, right? And you may get phased out of someone's life, and it doesn't have to be a personal, oh my gosh, like you're right. It's just a timing of where things are at. And I think just the more we can be real with ourselves and tapped in, like I know for me, when I made my changes in my life, I was totally, you know, I was a young party girl. I was, you know, 16, 17, hanging out with the older crew, my brother's older friends, and wild and all that. And then after my dad passed away and I realized that health is all we have, I definitely made some big strides, went into fitness competitions, got my personal training certification, did all these other things. And it was a very lonely road. You know, I brought my tilapia to bars with my friends and I was drinking water and they're like, what is wrong with you? You know, I went from eating a pound of bacon and drinking, you know, a beer bong to now I'm doing this. It was very uncomfortable for a lot of people around me, which then made me feel very uncomfortable and isolated and you know, misjudged and all that. As I've gotten through that, and I think you as well, and for many of us on the personal self-care and wellness journey, you start to recognize that it's okay, that all of that is part of the journey. And when you can truly love who you are, it doesn't bother you, right? Because you're not seeking out validation from someone else. You are already, you feel whole as you are. And I think the more that we can recognize that we just have to continually take those steps, right? Like it's not going to be easy. There is not a quick fix to it. You cannot take some, you know, quick medication or 30-day program and all of a sudden you're like, I will continuously study this for the rest of my life and I will continue to grow. And right. It's like, you know, like what right now, what's your recent course? I'm like, oh, I would love to take one of your courses, girl. Like, and this is, I think when you see, and now we're in this other space, how you're saying, like, when you level up your own game for yourself, has nothing to do with anyone else.
Right.
Different people appear or reappear, and I know that that's you and me, like we've always connected, right? And that's where I will always want to be a part of what you are doing and support what you are doing, because I know who you are and your journey, and we're very aligned. Back to the word of the day, alignment, doing things with the flow and the ease and not having to force it. And I think the same goes for relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Someone did this on my podcast the other day. I was like, oh my gosh, like nobody ever does that. I was like, that's brilliant. No, and I think this is just kind of just throwing this out there because I do feel, obviously, Kelly, so many people look up to you and so many people, you know, are learning from you and inspired by you every day. And I think it's also really humaning to know where you're at. And so since we've been talking about relationships and awareness, and this is obviously not going to be new to you because you and I talk about this on our own all the time. And I don't actually know where you're at in relationships. So maybe I should start there. Where are you at in relationships? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do have a snuggle buddy, sometimes, but I am, yeah. I have found myself, like I said, like over the last like 7 months, kind of like really understanding the ego and how the ego really played a huge role, negatively affecting just my mental health since the show aired 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So I have been getting myself strategically, and not in like this crazy hustle mode of like, oh, I have to get it done because it has to get out, in this just very graceful strategy of, okay, this is how I want to simplify my business, all my things that I have going on, from the podcast to creating content to coaching to courses, like all the things. It's still a lot. Like that's a lot of hats to wear to do all of that stuff, because it's not just me showing up on the podcast and reporting the thing. It's, granted, I don't do the editing, thank God for my virtual assistant, but I am doing the pitches. And so, you know, it's taking time to do that while also responding to DMs on social media, showing up and repurposing content and connecting with people on different platforms. Like it's a lot of work. It's not one baby task, right? So I've been simplifying, getting myself into more of like the place in this entrepreneurial of like, okay, how am I going to stand out as a CEO? How am I wanting to position myself actually as an entrepreneur? Because I feel like there have been times that I've been positioning myself more of like an employee and not as an entrepreneur. So I've just been like slowly taking time to get my courses where I want them to go. And so I can like just throw a link up there and be like, hey, you love my stuff? Go through this course. You need help with this? Go through this course, and open it up to like private coaching or more like mastermind level coaching at some point. So why I'm saying this about my business, it's that I also don't feel like I was in a place to have a committed relationship over the last, 7 months, because I felt like my attention needed to be with my business stuff.
Right.
I'm not the person that's going to say, oh, you can only grow in your business and you can't be successful in both a relationship and a business. I 100% believe that you can, but I feel like you got to prepare and you got to plan and you got to communicate and do the things to get them both in this just nurtured state. So
totally,
I had this friend over the last few months, while also keeping my options open. I went on a date last Friday. It wasn't going to work out, but it's like, I'm keeping my heart open because I do want a relationship. And yeah, I would love to have your plan within the next 2 years too. I mean, really, you want
to jump on the plan with me?
Yeah. Here we go. Well, what's been neat for me too is that the type of men that I am attracting and having experiences with, they're very aligned with what I'm wanting. Like I met a guy at a conference, like, a mindset type of conference, back in May. And literally we're sitting at the bar having some drinks and we're talking about all this like personal development and our stories and all that. And the guy was saying like all this stuff, all these like he had gone to a sex retreat, which I was like, that's amazing. Like
do tell more.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, like he had just invested so much and he was 30 years old, this guy. And I was like, wow, you are so evolved compared to, some 50-year-old men out there haven't even done this stuff. Like they're not aware of this. He was so aware of like what he wanted. He even had, I asked him, I was like, have you ever written out like your dream partner, like, all bodies? And he's like, yeah, I have it in my phone. I was like, God bless you. So he like shows me, I have mine in my phone. So now we're like reading each other. And I'm like, we're like literally soulmates sitting there next to each other, except for he lives in a completely different continent. So wow. I was like, maybe we should just add to the bottom of our list, lives nearby. I was like, because it's about getting specific. It is about getting specific in that. So, I do know what I want. And I think.
Can you tell us? I know you already sent me the list, but
Oh yeah, some things from my list.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, okay, so this is just a silly one, but like, I want someone who likes to dance, but also knows how. Doesn't just like to do it. There's difference. Right. Knows how, like would love, like is interested in actually, hey, you want to go dancing. Right. I want them to be cutting the rug on the dance floor at our wedding. Like you ain't sitting in a chair. We're dancing.
Love it.
Just like that kind of thing. But I'm looking for someone who is very emotionally connected, who's going to be supportive. The word safe comes up in a relationship. I want them to feel just as safe with me as them keeping me safe, like helping me stay safe. And I mean, emotionally, physically, obviously, if an intruder comes in the house, but I mean, like, actually, like emotionally safe because, of course, granted, I am single. I could have the story of everyone's left me. So I have felt unsafe, right? But I don't succumb to that belief. I don't succumb to that story. I'm like, no, there is someone out there that is going to create that safety, but I'm working on and have been working on creating that safety within myself. Like I said at the beginning, it's like I've been doing a lot of work to like recognize when I am getting overwhelmed or feeling distressed and regulating my nervous system, because that's a form of it's a safety tool. So I've just been like really working on that lately. But yeah, them showing up, I want them to want to have children. Essentially, I'm looking for someone who has never been married and doesn't have children, because I do know that those guys do exist out there. And that have been working on themselves and or are open to it and open, like think that it's so cool and interesting and unique and are like want to become obsessed like I am with this person, And I don't necessarily care like what they do as far as like a career, but I feel like they would most likely be in the entrepreneurial space in some capacity. Maybe I've thought like maybe they're in the entrepreneurial space and maybe they've been on a reality show because they get it, like they understand certain things. but I think it is more of the entrepreneurial and like just mindset driven type of person. But it could be like someone that works a corporate job, and that's great. But as long as they are like empowering themselves and showing up and just can like really create such a safe environment, you know, and have like really good sex.
Yes, please.
I love quality time. We could literally like just, I want a partner who is going to like be okay sitting on the couch or like playing a card game and like us just like having some drinks together and us not be around anyone. I don't want to like dissociate from my friends. I want him to want me to be around his friends. I want him to like brag about me with his friends. I want to be able to brag about him. I want my friends to see what a good man this is, and like him just, you know, not coming from a place of like trying to crave the attention or the acceptance, but like just doing it because that's who he is, like doing things like when we go to house parties, he's like asking all the women, all my friends, hey, do you need a drink? Do you need something else? Like,
right.
You know, like I just want a compassionate, kind man.
I love this. I mean, you're painting a just in the little bit you're saying right now. And I know, I mean, you sent me a great list. Yeah. You're painting a really clear picture. And I, as a great friend to you, I know it's happening. Like it's happening and it's beautiful. And that makes me so jazzed right now because like I said, we've known each other for years through ups and downs in different ways in our lives. And it's just so beautiful to be at this trajectory together, sitting here on your podcast, catching up, you know, Sophia's in there. She's pulled, I don't know how many cookies out of the drawer right now while we've been like, whatever. But I think that this is so important to remind anyone that's listening to start actually thinking about whatever it is, whether it's a new friendship you want or a different type of intimate relationship you want, but understanding who you are, where you're at, and what, because you brought up something great too, where you said, you know, with the last 7 months being so wrapped up in work, I understand that very much because as an entrepreneur, there have been seasons. And when I launched all my stuff last year, it was probably not the most ideal to be juggling so many things at once. And I think that it's really important to give each part of our lives a season. And then when it starts to flow together, you know, freely. Now in my head, I was like, oh, who do I know? Okay. You know me. I'm like, I'm going to come up with someone, but Kelly, I really do. I love who you are. I love what you're about. I love what you're doing. You're radiating. And I think that I have to say this because as someone who, you know, obviously, you know, I've trained and worked with people that have done reality show and not reality show. You have always been someone that has really just been so true to yourself and also been able to be so vulnerable. And I know behind the scenes of a lot of that stuff, there's a lot of emotional shit. I don't know how else to put it, but I had seen a lot of friends of mine be in that kind of limelight, and it really messes with them. And I just want to give you a huge shout out and hug and just acknowledge how incredible you are as a human being and what you're doing with what you've taken this opportunity and now you're doing something to give back to the world. And I think that is just so, so beautiful. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you. It's well received. Thank you. And I mean,
you rock.
Thank you very much. Same to you. I see you out there. Like I said, all your videos, I'm like, these are so amazing. I just think it's such a cool, you know, testament to your entire theme, your mission, your mantra of self-love and self-care, because there are so many women, mothers in particular, who hold a lot of guilt and shame around taking care of themselves. So you've made it happen with your child and including her, and she learns from you, and you've set such an amazing role model for her. So I'm proud of you. Awesome.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much. And I just, especially because I'm a mom, so I work with a lot of moms. You know, if I every day for the rest of my life can inspire just one person per day to take a little bit better care of themselves in some capacity, that is the purpose of my life. And to be able to have a child that now, I mean, it's hilarious because you have seen on videos, she's like, hi, I'm Sophia, and today we're going to make sure we drink water and self-care is this. And I just was like, oh my gosh, now she wants to do a podcast together. And I'm like, I don't know if this is a good idea, Sophia. But then I'm like, no, this is a great idea. I don't know. It's really fascinating. But, that's where coming into play that, we all have choices every moment of every day. And right now, the power of choosing ourselves, especially as a mom, is going to actually be a benefit to your children. And I think that's like a story that we need to rewrite, because so many moms come to me and they haven't taken care of themselves and they resent their husbands, and like, then they feel guilty, and then they're like impatient with their kids. And don't get me wrong, like I've been there and I understand that. The reality is, though, it means that you're just really not taking care of yourselves. And so for any mom that listens to any of your podcasts, understanding, even if it's just 5 minutes at getting your kid used to, like, she knows we do breathing exercises every day. She's meditating with me. Like, they will get used to you taking care of yourselves. And in fact, you're going to have more energy to give. And this isn't just for moms, it's for everybody, but specifically because I work with moms and I am a mom. When we really do put ourselves first, put that oxygen mask on first, we certainly can serve our family, our friends, and the world better. And I think about imagining a place that we did more of that. And then in our relationships, what that would look like if we all took a little bit more to actually nurture ourselves.
Absolutely. I totally agree. It amplifies, like, really, when you hone in on yourself, it amplifies everything. It's just perfect. I love it. Well, tell people, I want to keep talking to you, but I have to go.
Yeah, me too. I know my child, I'm like I said, I don't know how many snacks she just ate. She's jumping all over the couch right now. We're good.
Tell people where they can find you. Tell us about your book again, just like the title and where they can find that as well. And
thank you so much. So everything is located on my website. It is Jamie, JaimemCFaden.com, JamieMcFaden.com. I'm on Instagram, Jamie McFaden. My book is Waves of Self-Care. It Takes a Village. And yeah, through that book, you can find a lot of resources. My goal in that book, and I have, actually, I think, Kelly, you might be featured in the book. I can't quite remember. I pulled a bunch of quotes from people I had interviewed in the past who have inspired me. And so the whole book is really just a tribute on how to take a simple system like the WAVE system and implement that into your life in, 5 to 20 minutes a day, so that you can enhance your well-being and start to actually feel better internally. So with all that being said, Kelly, I can't wait. First of all, you got to get on my podcast soon. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, we need to plan to see each other soon.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I love you.
Thank you. I love you too. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, girl.
Go give her a follow, everyone. Go buy her book, all the things. She's amazing. So
thank you, love.
You're welcome. Bye, honey. If you loved this episode, please download, share, rate, and review. If you are ready to step into that next level version of you and grow your business and bank account, it's time to unleash your goddess magic and chase life with Kelly. You can start this epic expansion journey by diving into the Goddess Magic course bundle found at chaselifetogether.com. Please connect with me on Instagram at chaselifewithkelly. Join the Chase Life with Kelly Facebook community and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Till next time, create the life you crave, babe, and chase life with Kelly.